"You're checking the safe again? Don't you trust me?" That question echoed one perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning, save for the fact that the woman smiling before me was the one I had begun to deeply suspect. My name is Ethan, 35 years old, an intelligence officer with Central Command, CENTCOM, holding the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. I had served in the military for over 12 years, participating in numerous covert missions, from counterterrorism to dismantling international money laundering networks. This meant I was no stranger to meticulously crafted deceptions, two-faced individuals, or fraudulent activities disguised beneath a veneer of trust. And what unnerved me most at this moment was that the woman I shared my life with, Leanna, was exhibiting all those signs. We married 5 years ago, after a chance encounter at a civil military workshop. Leanna, then a graduate student in finance, was intelligent, confident, and ambitious. I remembered her asking me a barrage of questions about the military budget system, about tracking the flow of funds from black budgets. At the time, I simply thought she was curious because she loved me. I had no idea then that her curiosity had never faded. It had merely shifted, silently infiltrating what I never thought I'd have to hide from her. Lately, Leanna had started to change. Initially, it was casual questions about my work schedule, as if she was trying to pinpoint every hour I was away from home. Then gradually, she would rummage through my wallet looking for a receipt, check the safe to re-verify car insurance, or casually ask for my PIN just in case I needed to pay for you. Everything had a reason, seemingly harmless, until you strung it all together. One morning, I had just stepped out of the bathroom when I found Leanna standing in front of the safe. She wasn't startled. On the contrary, she smiled. That familiar, sweet smile she used when she wanted me to think everything was fine. "I'm checking the car insurance papers," she said, without me even asking. "You misplaced the files. I'll reorganize them." I simply nodded, showing no reaction. In my mind, every tiny detail was being recorded as if I were processing a real target, not my wife. We lived in the suburbs of Richmond, in a 2-story house with a garage and a backyard. Not too large, but private enough for a soldier who needed quiet when returning home. I paid the mortgage, managed all loans, and regularly transferred most of my salary to a joint account so Leanna could handle daily expenses. With her degree in financial knowledge, she once said, "Let me manage the money. I'm better at it." At the time, I felt proud to have such a meticulous wife. But now, every one of those words echoed back like a dull punch to the trust I had unreservedly placed in her hands. And then, when the suspicions were no longer fleeting feelings but began to emerge as clearly as a spotlight at night, I decided not to confront, but to set up a test. In the military, we call it controlled deception, creating a hypothetical opportunity for the suspect to reveal their true behavior in a completely monitored environment. That evening, I took out a new credit card, unused, unconnected to any account Leanna knew about. I called it the bait card. The account behind it was a private fund I had established after an international joint operation in Poland, where I received a personal reward of $70,000. No one, not even military finance, had access without high-level clearance. I immediately linked that account to the military transaction monitoring system I typically use to track money flows in black operations. Every transaction, even a single USD, would be encrypted, geolocated, and recorded second by second. I placed the card in my wallet, right between the 2 cards I used most often, a position anyone regularly searching my wallet would notice. The next morning, I still said goodbye as usual, still kissed her forehead, still said I miss you, only this time, I wasn't truly sure who I missed anymore. The card remained in my wallet for 3 days before it disappeared. There were no signs of forced entry, no sound, no request to borrow, no message saying I need to use it for a bit. Only one thing had changed. On Wednesday morning, when I left for base, Leanna saw me off with a radiant smile and a breakfast of soft scrambled eggs with butter, my favorite dish after every training session. A strange tenderness, almost theatrical. When I returned that evening, the card was gone from my wallet. Nothing else was missing. Everything was put back in its place, so precisely. It seemed intentional, but I showed no reaction. I didn't ask. I didn't even betray any expression. Because when you set a trap, you don't spring it too early. I opened my laptop and logged into the monitoring system. There, under real-time surveillance, the first notification appeared. 11:37 a.m. Transaction confirmed. 1-250. High-end fashion boutique, Washington, D.C. I leaned back, tapping my fingers on the desk. That boutique wasn't far from where Liana had mentioned a few weeks prior. A place she said Vanessa, my best friend from college, just opened a luxury lingerie brand and invited her to check out the new collection. Less than 30 minutes later, a new transaction appeared. 12 p.m. $3,800. Jewelry store, Georgetown. I silently watched the screen. Each entry that appeared was a stroke on the unfolding map of betrayal. And then in the afternoon, the system reported 2:49 p.m. $4,250. Airline ticket booking. Air France. Business class. Washington, D.C. to Milan. Connecting in Paris. Flying the next morning. A journey charted with money. A plan long in preparation. No doubt remained. She wasn't just taking the card to shop. She was fleeing. Or rather, executing a meticulously arranged operation. I sat in the dark of my study, only the screen's light reflecting on my face. Years of training, months spent sleeping and eating in the field, none of it hurt as much as this moment. Liana hadn't just taken the money. She had gambled that I wouldn't notice, that I would trust too much to check. And most frighteningly, she had guessed right, had I not lived and breathed in the world of liars. That evening, when I emerged from my study, Liana was in the living room, feet up on the couch, watching a reality show about glamorous women living in Beverly Hills. "I think I'll visit Vanessa tomorrow," she said, turning to look at me as if nothing had happened. "Might stay a few days. We're planning to go to the spa to relax. I need to escape the city for a bit." I just nodded. Didn't ask, didn't smile. "You're not objecting? I think you deserve a break." And in my mind, the system continued to send notifications. Delapan. Satu p.m. Lima Star Hotel booking. Milan. Tiga nights. Junior suite. Two people. I closed the door to my room, reopening the tracking software. All transactions, from the boutique to the jewelry store, from the airline to the hotel, were part of an organized, unemotional sequence of behaviors. Liana knew exactly what she was doing. She knew when I wouldn't be present, knew I was busy with training, knew how to withdraw a sum of money without leaving a trace. But what she didn't know was that her every move had been recorded by the very technology I once used to hunt cyber criminals in Syria. That night, I didn't sleep. I just waited. The next morning, at 5:42 a.m., my phone vibrated. Not a message, not an email, but a series of alerts from the financial transaction tracking system I had configured, each line appearing like a bullet straight into my worn-out trust. 5:41 a.m. Flight check-in confirmed. Air France. Business class. Flight AF029. DC. To Milan, connecting in Paris. Passengers. Liana Monroe, Tristan Hale. I stared at the second name, Tristan Hale, as if I had just been punched in the chest. Not Vanessa. Not any friend I had ever met. But Tristan, a name I had only fleetingly heard once, at Liana's best friend's engagement party, more than 2 years ago. He was her old college friend, who had studied financial technology, worked for a blockchain startup, and had been investigated for illicit appropriation of user data, then disappeared from social media a few months later. At the time, I didn't think much of it. A fleeting name. A man never mentioned a second time. Now he was flying to Europe, beside my wife, with my money. I clicked on the booking details. 2 business-class tickets, adjacent seats, purchased the previous night. Under special requests, the note clearly appeared. Request Mediterranean vegetarian meal for both. Do not seat near small children. I leaned back in my chair, took a deep breath, trying to keep my line of reasoning from being distorted by emotion. My wife hadn't just taken the card. She had planned with her lover, booked tickets for the same time, same flight, same hotel in Milan. And through all of it, I was never mentioned. Not a word. No awkward concealment. Just calculation. And coldness. I opened the extended tracking profile. The system scanned transactions over the past 6 months from devices, Wi-Fi networks, and mobile device locations Liana frequently used. Seemingly disparate connections gradually formed a clear network. Encrypted messages via Signal between Liana and a number registered in San Diego, an area where Tristan once lived. Strange transactions from Liana's e-wallet to an anonymous intermediary cryptocurrency wallet, frequently appearing around 2-3 a.m. Several previous hotel bills, Paris, New York, and Zurich, where Liana had said she went to the spa with Vanessa. It all started to have a common denominator. Not a one-off, not a single person, but a system of repeated behavior. With that man, I clenched my hands on the armrest. Anger seeped into my fingertips, but it didn't erupt into hatred. It became rationale. In the military, we don't act when angry, we act when we have data. I opened the geolocation map tracking the bait card transactions. Every swipe point was GPS tagged, along with time, store name, payment clerk ID, and, unmistakably, extracted images from facial recognition cameras, thanks to the API I linked from the airport surveillance system. 7:24 a.m. Paris Charles de Gaulle. They arrived. 8:05 a.m. Chanel boutique. Liana swiped 3,700 euros to buy a bag. 9:12 a.m. Tristan paid for a Rolex watch with the very card she took from my wallet. I tapped my fingers on the desk. Excellent. I murmured. Keep going. Leave as many traces as possible. That evening, Liana called. Her voice was light, joyful, as if she had just escaped a stressful world of which I was the sole representative. Patrick, I'm in Paris, she giggled. Vanessa took me to a restaurant by the river. You'd love this place. They serve amazing truffle dishes. I looked at the screen, seeing the transaction she had just made. 6:41 p.m. La Petite Maison. 600 euros. 2 sets of high-end wine. I needed this. You understand, Liana said, her voice dripping with sweetness. After all the work pressure, I just want to see a lighter version of myself again. I remained silent for a moment, then replied, I understand. You deserve to rest. And when I hung up, I sent all the collected data, including the itinerary, transactions, and Tristan's personal information, to Rebecca Torres, a federal agent from the Financial Crimes Division whom I had collaborated with on a joint operation between the military and the Department of Justice. 10 minutes later, she called back. Ethan, Rebecca said, we just received an international alert. Your wife's cash withdrawals through foreign cards have exceeded $50,000 in less than 72 hours. This triggers cross-border money laundering investigation mode. Additionally, she continued, the man accompanying her, Tristan Hale, is being tracked in a federal asset misappropriation case from 2019. You just helped us close the last link. I said nothing. I just looked at the text on the screen from the tracking system. Total expenditure from bait card, $58,960. I closed my laptop, poured myself a glass of whiskey, and waited. Because traders often don't know that the game is over before they even begin. She returned on Sunday. I knew that before she even said it. Because the tracking system had reported a signal from a duty-free transaction at Charles de Gaulle Airport at 10:32 a.m., exactly 3 hours before her flight departure. Store: Hermes. Product: €1,200 crocodile leather belt. Recipient: Ethan Monroe. Note: gift. A gift from my money, bought by the one who betrayed me, to give to myself, as if her lies needed to be wrapped in a box, tied with a bow, and displayed on a table. 4:40 p.m. The flight landed at Dulles International Airport. 5:10 p.m. Her phone signal appeared at the long-term parking lot. 5:26 p.m. I received a text message. Just landed, love you. I looked at the message, typed 3 letters. Okay, then deleted them. Typed again. Deleted again. Finally, I didn't reply. Instead, I called Rebecca Torres, who had become the primary federal contact responsible for the case. She confirmed that the airport financial inspection team and investigative agents were waiting in the immigration control area. We'll follow standard procedure, Rebecca said, her voice steady but firm. She'll be taken to a secondary inspection area, and there, we'll cross-reference transaction information, documents, and statements. And if she says I authorized it, I asked, we'll contact you immediately for verification. But Ethan, Rebecca's voice deepened, even without your confirmation, the current evidence is sufficient to prosecute on 3 levels: credit card fraud, identity theft, and international money laundering. You've done better than an independent investigative unit could. I sat in the living room, facing our wedding photo on the wall, where Liana was smiling, her lightly curled hair touching her shoulders, and her eyes looking at me as if I were everything. Looking back now, I no longer saw her in that picture. I only saw an actress in a performance too perfect, until the stage lights went out. 6:03 p.m. My phone rang. Unknown number. I picked up. Ethan, Rebecca's voice began. We're in the secondary inspection area. Liana claims you authorized her to use the card to hold money during the trip. She says all expenses were approved by you. I wasn't surprised. I just sighed. I did not authorize any expenses, I replied. That card was not within the scope of shared finances. She took it without permission. She used the same card for dozens of international transactions, many of which involved a third party, Tristan Hale. I have the transaction log, geolocation, and confirmed images. Rebecca was silent for a moment, as if nodding on the other end of the line. That's enough. We're proceeding with the arrest. 7:42 p.m. I received a second call. This time the number was from Dulles Federal Detention Center. I answered. Her voice came through, panicked, distorted, no trace left of the woman who used to smile when she touched my wallet. Ethan. I don't know what's happening. They arrested me. They say I violated federal law. You have to tell them. I thought you agreed. You just need to confirm for me. I looked at my laptop screen. The last line of the tracking log was still running. Total expenditure: $59,700. Over 40 transactions in 3 countries. The product list included an Hermes bag, a Patek Philippe watch, La Perla lingerie, a suite at the Hotel Danieli, Venice. I leaned back, my voice calm. Liana, you can explain all of this, but you should save that explanation for your lawyer. I hung up. For the first time in months, the house was pleasantly silent. No more rattling of my wallet. No more velvet-coated lies. Only me. And the truth. Monday, 8 a.m. I woke up earlier than usual, not out of duty, not by an alarm, but for one sole reason. Liana's first interrogation was scheduled for today. Before leaving the house, I reopened the entire file. Data from the bait card, geolocation maps, transaction logs, extracted images from CCTV at transaction points, hotel bills, flight tickets, booking codes, and even decrypted encrypted messages, all printed out into stacks of paper, neatly clipped into a gray Department of Justice file. It wasn't just evidence. It was the true portrait of the person I once believed was family. I arrived at the federal courthouse in Arlington at 9:30 a.m. Rebecca Torres was already waiting in the courtroom. In her hand was another stack of documents, thicker than mine. "We expanded the investigation after you provided the data last week," she said, without any pleasantries. "And Ethan, this case is much bigger than we thought." I tilted my head, waiting for her to continue. "We found similar patterns of behavior in 4 scattered incidents over the past 18 months. Repeated transactions, same type of bookings, business class tickets, same spending patterns, all conducted using accounts not belonging to Leanna." "She's done this before?" I asked, though the answer was already clear in my heart. "Exactly. In London, she used a card under the name Miranda S., an old college friend of hers. In Amsterdam, it was a company card from a boutique where she used to work part-time. And in Milan 3 months ago, at the Hotel Danieli, she used a credit card under the name Tristan Hale, but linked to a fake company account." I closed my eyes for a few seconds. The pieces fell, clashing together, forming a massive picture. No longer just about my wife stealing my card, but a sophisticated transnational financial misappropriation network. "We're working with Europol and the International Fraud Investigation Bureau," Rebecca continued. "Leanna isn't just an unfaithful wife. She's a link in an organized financial data exploitation chain." She placed a file folder in front of me. I opened it. Inside were printed images from security cameras at high-end stores in Paris, Rome, and Vienna. Leanna, sometimes arm in arm with a man in dark glasses, not Tristan. Sometimes alone, always designer brands, always eyes that knew exactly where the cameras were. "And Tristan?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Tristan was a system engineer for a fintech startup that was dissolved due to a data misappropriation scandal. Since then, he hasn't owned any assets. But Rebecca turned to the last page. "He's the one who set up the intermediary e-wallets to transfer money between Leanna's accounts and the related group. In other words, he's her official money launderer." I clenched my hands. For years reading intelligence reports, I had seen these types in analytical files, but I never imagined my name would be at the center of that connection map. Before leaving the meeting room, Rebecca looked at me, a flicker of emotion in her eyes for the first time. "You know, Ethan, if it weren't for you, someone who understands how to record every movement, how to build a precise profile like a financial agent, we probably would have missed this case. Leanna is too smart. She knows how to hide things, but she never expected that the person she chose as a victim was the one who set the trap before she even had a chance to run." I nodded, not exactly to thank her, but as a cold confirmation. I once loved a woman who knew how to play a role perfectly to the very end, until that very role led her to bind herself to the defendant's box. 7:20 p.m. that evening, I received a message from an unsaved number. "I know you're angry, Ethan, but I did it for my future. I just needed a fresh start. I'll pay it back. I swear. But don't take things further." I didn't reply. I took a screenshot, saving it to the indirect confession file. After all, I didn't need her apology. I just needed her to be unable to do it to others. Tuesday, 9 a.m. Arlington Federal Courthouse, Courtroom 4C. I sat in the back row, spine straight, hands clasped in front of my chest. My neatly pressed field uniform wasn't meant to impress, but rather as a reminder to myself that I was here not as a betrayed husband, but as a disciplined soldier, even when my heart had been deceived. Leanna was escorted into the courtroom by 2 judicial officers. She wore the distinctive orange jumpsuit of the Federal Detention Center, her wrists cuffed, and her eyes, for the first time since everything began, had nowhere to look. I felt no anger, no pain, only emptiness. The federal prosecutor, Attorney Michael Garrett, a calm but sharp Jewish man in his 52nd, stood up to open. Your Honor, the defendant Leanna Monroe is currently facing 4 charges. 1. Credit card fraud with a total value exceeding $400,000. 2. Organized identity theft. 3. Transnational money laundering. 4. Conspiracy to commit financial fraud with federal and international elements. Within 18 months, the defendant used over 11 credit cards and accounts not belonging to her, including the card of her husband, an active-duty military officer, to finance a lavish lifestyle that cannot be substantiated by any legitimate source of income. He held up a thick stack of documents. All details are verified by GPS tracking, bank transactions, security cameras, and by her own confidence that she would never be discovered. The defense attorney, a young woman, court-appointed, stood to counter. Her voice was clear, but slightly trembling. Your Honor, the defendant is a first-time offender, with a good academic background, once an honor student in finance. She has no prior criminal record, and strong ties to the community. We request that she be granted bail, pending the formal trial, so that the defendant has the opportunity to arrange legal matters and fulfill her financial obligations to those affected. Attorney Garrett lightly pointed to the map of seized assets. She has no intention of arranging anything. She was preparing to flee. Over $200,000 has been transferred to untraceable cryptocurrency wallets. She booked scattered flights to countries with no extradition treaties. And, Your Honor, at the time of her arrest, she was carrying a notebook containing over 40 credit card numbers of unrelated individuals, including boutique clients, old classmates, and even family members. The judge, Miss Patricia Coleman, a stern African-American woman with eyes that allowed no mercy to cloud justice, flipped through a few pages of the file in front of her. The court has reviewed the nature of the crime, the level of preparation, the scale of the consequences, and the risk of recidivism. The court finds the defendant's behavior to be highly systematic. The court rules, bail denied. The defendant will be held until the formal trial. Leanna turned to look at me as she was led away. Her eyes were no longer angry, no longer pleading, only stunned. Perhaps, until that very moment, she truly understood that she had no way back. After the hearing, Rebecca handed me a financial report. The $59,700 from your bait card will be reimbursed within 30 days, she said. As for the other victims, we are coordinating with international financial agencies to trace the funds and arrange compensation. I nodded, thanked her, and walked out of the courthouse. The Virginia sky that day was overcast, yet strangely light. A battle had ended, and this time I didn't need a gun to win. 3 months after the hearing, I moved out of the house in Richmond. Not because I couldn't bear to live there anymore, but because I no longer had any reason to stay. Every wall, every curtain, every window bore the traces of a life built on falsehood, no matter how beautiful or tidy it appeared on the surface. I sold the house, moving all my belongings to the small apartment I used to rent when I was a first lieutenant. Small, minimalist, but clean. No traces of the past. No room for tangled memories hidden in drawers or at the bottom of the closet. I declined the offer to be re-elected to lead the military's financial investigation unit. Instead, I accepted an offer from a cybersecurity firm in Denver, where I could continue my work of monitoring and preventing financial fraud, this time in the civilian sector. Part of me wanted to distance myself from the military, not out of disillusionment, but because I needed to start over, as a human being, not an officer. As for Leanna, she pleaded guilty at the formal trial. The evidence was too clear to resist. Her lawyer presented a plea bargain in exchange for a lighter sentence. The court sentenced her to 8 years in federal prison, with 3 years of probation upon release, and ordered her to pay over $400,000 in restitution to the victims in the case, including me, the boutique where she used to work, and 3 other individuals whose accounts were compromised. Tristan was extradited from Hungary, where he was trying to withdraw money from an encrypted e-wallet. He received a heavier sentence, 15 years in federal prison for money laundering and international fraud conspiracy. Rebecca Torres called to inform me the day the sentence was pronounced. "You saved at least 6 other victims without knowing it," she said. "Not only did your evidence help crack the case, but the way you handled it, calmly, step by step, without emotion, taught the interagency investigative team a lot. Not many people can do that, even if they are soldiers." I thanked her, then hung up. No further praise was needed. I had what I needed: truth and freedom. 6 months later, I received a call from Vanessa, Leanna's sister. "Ethan, I don't know what to say. You didn't deserve this. I also didn't realize all those trips Leanna said she went on with me were actually just to deceive you." I simply replied, "It's not your fault. She deceived you, me, and even herself." Vanessa was silent, then asked, "Is there anything I can do for you?" I thought for a moment, then said, "Just remember, sometimes people aren't who they appear to be. Don't put all your trust in appearances. Don't let a beautiful smile cloud your judgment. I haven't loved again. Perhaps someday I will, but not now. Now, every morning, I brew coffee for one person, myself. I run in the soft Denver sunlight, where winter isn't as cold as people's hearts, and the wind blows as if washing away every wound. I no longer wait for messages, no longer flinch when the safe makes a slight sound. I live, truly live, not in a marriage, but in awareness. And sometimes, on silent nights, I reopen the old file, looking at the words at the top of the page. Classified, Bécard Surveillance, Target, Lionel Monroe. I smile, close the file, place it in the safe, now triple encrypted, then turn off the light. Some battles don't use guns, but still leave scars, and some victories are when you walk away without looking back.